Hey everybody, welcome to Wheel of Mind, the Wheel of Time point of view reread podcast. This season we're reading Matt Cawthon's perspective. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 32. I'm your co-host, Lajara Dane of the White Oddjaw.
Hi, and I'm Giskel Simris, a scholar from Ilion. Those of you familiar with our Wheel of Mind podcast know how we roll, but for any new listeners, this is a reread podcast, and we may and will spoil any plot line of the series without any further warning, so this right now is your spoiler warning. We recommend that you read the entire series before listening to our podcast. So this is your spoiler warning. We recommend that you read the entire series before listening to this podcast. Today we're examining chapters 25 and 27 of Knife of Dreams. I'll get us started at chapter 25, entitled Attending Elida. Matt's group found a great spot to rest for lunch. They were trying to make good time up to a hidden smuggler's pass that led up into Murandy. Just something that Vannon had heard of once. No big deal. Finishing up his piece of rabbit for lunch, Matt started to wipe his hands on his pants. Tuon looked at him disapprovingly, so he pointedly and loudly wiped his hands on his pants anyway, while staring right back at her. There was a lot of finger-waggling going on between her and Solutia, which Matt could not interpret. Mr. Sanad made some loud guesses, though, which Matt interrupted. Women always ganged up on poor men. Light. Even with the tension between the Aes Sedai and the two Suldam, now who were both students of the Aes Sedai, Matt felt pretty good. Now his cuts were itching badly, and the dice had started back up again, but he was trying to be happy. Julin and Amathera had startled a black snake underneath their log, which quickly crawled away from the group. It was venomous, but Matt told them to let it go. It was just trying to get away, after all. But before they could saddle up and leave, Tuon asked for a kiss. In fact, she asked loudly enough for everyone to hear. Matt obliged her with a quick peck, which seemed to just make her angry. Quote, "Do I remind you of your sister? Or perhaps your mother?" End quote. People laughed at that one, so Matt gave her another kiss. A deep, passionate kiss intended to curl her toes. It was certainly not his first kiss, but he could tell that it was hers. Tuon simply commented that he felt feverish. She knew that his wounds were festering. Light! As she imperiously gave commands to have him strip and have his wounds tended more properly, Vannon arrived back at the camp with Talmanes. Talmanes? Matt's temper was already slipping as he asked if Talmanes had brought the entire band up into Altara. No, Matt, only 3 banners of horse and 4,000 mounted crossbowmen. He left 3 banners of horse and 5 banners of foot soldiers back in Murandy, along with a banner of masons. Never mind that the band had only consisted of 2 banners total when they left Saladar. How was Matt ever going to pay that many men? Then Talmanes offered some good news. The band had done some work for King Roedran and had enough money to make payroll for a year. But now the bad news. The pass that they were headed for was lost in the landslide. There was no good way known through those mountains without that pass.
This chapter was weird in its organization in that we have a Matt chapter icon, the dice, but it's named after the first point of view from Tarna Fair, the new keeper who is attending Elida. And so I couldn't find any thematic coherence between the two point of views or the name or anything there. So this one it made me wonder if they were just having a hard time shoehorning these 2 scenes into chapters and just kind of cobbled them into one. Sometimes we can find some continuity between them or find some cool overlap, right. But I just wasn't seeing it this time.
There's nothing linking those two, right? Yeah. Unless you just look at the fact that in both of them, someone is dealing with a headache. But,
yeah,
but I don't think that's probably what Jordan was shooting for, though.
These last couple chapters, including this one, has got me realizing that Matt is pretty irritating. I mean, we love him, but I would be groaning and rolling my eyes a whole lot around him as much as the in-universe women do around him because of some of his habits. So we had he laid his gross hat on the table in the last episode that really freaked me out. And then in this one, which, I mean, going back to that hat, he got it from Kadir in the waist. I still can't quite get over that. Like, do you have your hat laundered? I don't think so. Like, it's got to be so gross.
Got to be nasty.
Put some stranger's hat on your head in the hottest place in the friggin' continent. Wear it for months afterwards.
Right.
So besides that, now he's rubbing the rabbit grease on his clothes just because, we're going to get dirty, sleeping rough out here anyway. Oh, well. And it's already kind of driving me mad. He, as much as he loves his finery, he doesn't have an appreciation of all the care that it takes to keep his clothing fine because, of course, he likes to avoid work. So
right, that's what I started
really
saying.
I really don't get how Lopen and Narum seem to like him so much and stand working for him. But yeah, that's just it would be my personal annoyance with his habits for sure.
Right. Well, I think it's so entertaining to me that Matt has gotten to the point he doesn't know how to function without having a body servant. Now, Perrin, God forbid, if somebody tries to do anything for Perrin, he's gonna go pour the tea for himself or whatever the case may be. Perrin is having none of that. But with Matt, he's gotten so accustomed to this so quickly, he really doesn't fare well without Lopen and Narum there. He doesn't really do anything to pick up after himself or anything like that, or even notice that he needs to.
Right.
But the thing with wiping the grease on his pants, I mean, he started to just kind of out of rough country boy outdoorsman something to do.
Yeah, he was going to do it anyway just because he's him, but then he did it on purpose.
I love how
very deliberately.
When she's looking at him, just giving him that glare, don't you dare do that. And he has to stop and glare back at her and real loudly and do it so everyone can hear it and know what he's doing, just exaggeratedly, rubbing his hands on his pants, wiping the grease off. I mean, that is so funny to me because he is one of these people who can be irritating without trying. But when he's trying to be irritating, he is the grand master of all irritants.
Yeah, he nails it. This scene has the same vibes to me as those videos of cats knocking things off of counters, but they do it, you'll say no, and they'll look right at you in the eyes and just slowly do it anyway.
Exactly. I mean, I love that about him. And I can say that sometimes when I feel that women in my life are being a little too overbearing, I will do, maybe not that. I won't wipe grease on my pants because, quite frankly, I wash my own work pants. But I know what it takes to get them clean. But I will do some passive-aggressive things like that just to show you can't tell me what to do. You can't push me around. And it's very childish, but I find myself doing it. So in one regard, I'm cheering Matt on as he does this. And in the other regard, I'm saying, this is so terrible. It's just horrible for him to do this.
Yeah.
I kind of enjoyed everyone's shock when they ran into Talmanas. In the middle of the bloody, flaming forest, in the middle of nowhere, where no one expects anyone to be. No one had a clue Matt was going to be there. He runs into Talmanas. And that is, of course, just the height of Taveran work there. I mean, there's no other way to explain that one.
Yeah, and I don't even think I fully grasped why. I guess I thought that Vannon was going to go into Murundi and do some scouting, and I thought that while he was there, he picked up Talmanas. I didn't realize Talmanas made it to this side, by himself.
Right, yeah.
Until he told his side of the story. So I was really confused about who was where, when, and why until I reread this a couple times.
And I've forgotten now why Talmanas and them were traveling there, but he left the band, and I think he was looking for Matt, but because he just took that pass. Oh, let's just go. This is the quickest way down to, toward Ibu Dar. And, that's the last place we heard from Matt. He was in Ibu Dar. And boom, the whole, the pass gets shut down. And, of course, that's, again, Taveran work, taking Matt and the rest, half of the band where they need to be. And his shock at the band being so huge. And Talmanas, as ever, just with his dry wit, no, Lord, I didn't bring the entire band. I only have, this number and that number. And it's already, the ones he brought with him are twice as many as Matt had when he left the band, when he, back in Saladar. And now, they've left 3 times that number, twice that number, or whatever, back in Murundi. And it's, of course, we know, going through the entire siege of Tarvalin and all of that as Egwene's army moved through and the band followed them, people saw, okay, here's 2 large armies. There's about to be a battle. I can make some money. So they'd be join up with one group or the other. So we know how it grew that large. They never really told what kind of work they did for Roedran that I remember. But again, that's just Taveran work. Even when Matt was not with them, things were happening that needed to happen to bring everyone together at this point. So,
thank you for filling me in on that. I am still in Crossroads of Twilight pretty early in my personal reread. So I had forgotten some of these puzzle pieces here. I did notice in this chapter, Matt was thinking again about how the Aelfinn and Eilfinn could be recording everything that he's experiencing. And I think he risked a lot by telling Tom about this in our last episode, because you can imagine just how stigmatizing it could be to share that type of belief with anybody. And Matt is already kind of afraid of that stuff. Well, I can't tell anybody about having bloody dice rolling in my head, and I can't tell anybody about color swirling in my mind and all this other stuff. You know, he does trust Tom, though. He did tell Tom and Julian about the colors thing, and they didn't really understand it and kind of moved past it, I think. But Tom never saw him cursed by the Shadar Logoth dagger, and I think that's one thing that really works in his favor as far as being able to trust Matt and not think that he's just crazy when he shares something weird.
Right. I didn't think of that. Most everyone else experienced Matt that way, but not Tom. Thank you. I mean, well, technically he was, but he was in the beginning stages of it. It was not noticeable.
He didn't see him when he was really paranoid. Because he didn't really start to show it till he was like on... Well, I mean, he did, I guess, when he was on the ship, but more so after Whitebridge, I think it picked up.
Much more so afterwards, I agree.
Yeah, and especially in, like, Camelin, and of course Tom was not there at the time, so I think if Tom had been there for that, more of that, it could have really colored his perceptions of Matt a lot more, but he remembers him as more of a athletic, well-meaning boy that's just a little rambunctious or something, probably. And that's kind of his first impression.
Yeah.
But I think that you can imagine somebody like Basil Gill remembered him all sick and paranoid when he came back to Camelin, and Matt says anything that seems unusual. He's like, are you sure? Because you were sick when I saw you before, right? Are you okay? I don't really have any doubt that Tom would trust him at this point from this amount of time together, but from Matt's perspective, I think it's still a vulnerability that he does not normally willingly allow himself to open up to people in that way. And he really only did so because he couldn't see any other choice, and because he's a little more of a hero than he thinks he is. So he's having to be extremely vulnerable in ways that he does not normally do in order to engage in this Moiraine rescue mission. And I'm just, he doesn't think a lot about the rescue mission here, but just him thinking about whether they could be recording his thoughts got me on this train of just thinking how brave that was of him to share all of it.
Yeah, because it's on his mind to some degree. Even though we're not, privy to all of that, but it's on his mind to some degree. So this is another one of those, not a lot of action Matt chapters, but it's still, it's enlightening. It gives us some views, of Matt's character that we don't get with some of the other chapters. So I enjoy looking into it.
Especially when he rescues the snake, or not rescues, but lets it go. I think that's pretty important, seeing that he is not ignorant and superstitious about wildlife like some people could be, I suppose. And snakes are something that people tend to be, very cruel to because of just beliefs about them. And I think it had symbolic significance here too. So on my second read through, while I was making my notes, I realized that Tuon seemed to admire him so much in that moment because she may have seen herself in that snake. She could trust that he's going to take her back to Ebudar eventually. He's going to be letting this very dangerous creature go out of respect for her. And I think this was lost on Matt, for sure, who he finds this kiss request right afterwards, very out of the blue. And the first time I read it through kind of quickly, I did too. But I think that she really had admiration for him in that moment, and maybe have had some kind of omen there, but I think she just probably saw it as a symbol. But of course, immediately after that, she's got to make sure she tempers any of that tenderness, and she's got to get straight back to strategy and being cold again. So it kind of gets me back to thinking in the last episode what she thought about the people and the culture, and I'm still landing on she might have had a real genuine fondness for the Altaran people and a genuine personal interest in their customs and in Matt's background, but she kind of had to bring it back to the political but just to kind of try to keep things professional. So once she comments on his fever after the kiss, it could make you think, oh, maybe that was her just strategy the whole time to figure out if he was feverish from those wounds, because she kept nagging him about trying to take care of them.
Yes,
but I think it's a little of both. I think it's a little, she actually wanted to kiss him, but she actually might have also just wanted to check if he had a fever, and she keeps him guessing like that.
Oh, yes. She has to keep him off balance because, I mean, you have to with Matt. Otherwise, he will run roughshod all over you, all over anyone. It doesn't matter who it is. So, and she has such a mysterious air about her, such an aura of authority, and yet not the kind of authority that Matt rebels against. So she's able to pull that off where most people could not. Most rulers could not. Even someone like Tylan, whom Matt had some affection for, she was not able to control him and make his head spin the way that Tuon does with, without it being sexual. There's not sexual tension between them so much as just this attraction. They are growing attracted to one another. Just as when he really gave her the good kiss, the second one, he said something to the effect of, "Why did I not think she was an armful?" Or she wouldn't fill his arms. I don't remember exactly how he worded it, but it's like he always thought she looked too skinny. But once he got his arms around her, it felt good. Matt was really falling for her, and I believe Tuon is really falling for Matt. And I see it more through this careful read through than I did running through trying to get the story, trying to just read everything. And taking in a lot more of this detail. So, that kiss, I think she really wanted to kiss him, but with everything, with Tuon, it has to have a political element there. She has to be aware of everything going on around her and be able to use it to her advantage because her life depends on it. She's had many assassination attempts, sometimes by people she knew and loved and trusted. Everything she does, she's analyzing it as she goes. So even the kiss that, he said it was her first kiss, he could tell, but she was a fast learner. And, so they were really enjoying it. He did his best to curl her toes with that kiss. And then, she enjoys it, and then she stops and steps back. Oh, you feel feverish.
Yep. And that gives her the upper hand, because I think she could feel that she was being too vulnerable. So then she's got a little bit of information that she can use to gain a little more control again.
And another thing to continue exerting that control, she asked him publicly. She asked loudly. Yeah. That was not as if it was just, he and her and Solution, and she just wanted to try a kiss. And where it could get passionate, it could get out of control, whatever her fears were, or I don't know. No, she asked him publicly, loudly, so she could control the situation. It could appear to everybody else to be a dare or a game or whatever she wanted it to appear. It could appear just like she commands a kiss and Matt gives a kiss. If she has control over him, or however she wants people to perceive it, she did it publicly. But again, that gives her that control. So you were so dead on with that word.
Those were all the points I had about this chapter, though. Did you have any more?
No, that's it with me.
Okay.
And I do want to thank you for bringing out the parallel between the snake and Tuon. I had not really thought of it that way. You always bring out these little nuggets that just go right over my head, and I enjoy. It's one of the things I enjoy about this podcast is I'm learning so much as we go through it that I would have been oblivious to without you.
Well, I felt like you kind of upped the ante very early in season 1 when you analyzed the chapter title, when I had mostly been ignoring those. I think it was Matters of the Heart or something like that in New Spring. And you brought up like 3 ways it related to in the chapter. I'm like, oh man, I'm sleeping on these chapter titles. I need to look at these.
And so that one was just a flash of inspiration in the moment. It was not even studied ahead of time. So there's a lot of that. But when you immerse yourself in this story, there's so many beautiful, rich things that you bring out. And I hope I know this is a little off topic, but if some of you listeners out there, you hear or see something from some of these episodes that you think is a big deal that we missed, just send a message. Let us know. We will gladly incorporate it into the next podcast because, again, we're always trying to improve the product here and keep everyone happy with what we're doing.
Yes, and without further ado, I suppose I will go ahead and summarize Chapter 27, A Plain Wooden Box. The choice of the dragon chapter icon and the title, A Plain Wooden Box, bode pretty poorly for Rand. That kind of made me go, not again! Right. But just in ways that you don't quite expect. So, once we get back to Matt's perspective, which is totally unrelated to Rand's further trauma in this chapter, we've had a little bit more of a time skip from our last chapter. So he's waiting in the woods with several mounted crossbowmen, waiting for some signals and for Shan-Chan forces to walk right into a trap. If he has set everything up just right, that's what should happen. He's watching Tuon's inscrutable face, unable to discern what she must be thinking about all of this. And we learn that the Aes Sedai are involved somehow, that the plan will take lots of luck, and that Mat wants to keep the Shan-Chan reacting to him instead of enacting their own plans. That last bit sets Tuon and Selucia whispering mysteriously and inaudibly. A green night flower signal from Aludra indicates no Rockin scouts, so Mat leads his men as quietly as possible down a road and to the northeast where he expects the Shan-Chan to be. During the trip, he has a hard time keeping his thoughts on the task at hand. He keeps thinking about Tuon and how unpredictable she was. She had viciously rebuffed him when he tried another kiss recently, but then initiated another one. She melted in his arms, but was ice as soon as they parted. He could just not figure her out. But trying to solve this puzzle right now seems like a great way to get killed, so he gets his head back in the game. They reach a gap where there are hills on either side of the road. He divides his crossbowmen with half on each side, concealed in the woods and devoid of reflective armor. Mat has to break up an argument between Tuon and Teslin about Jolene wanting to bond Mat as a warder. Tuon makes some cryptic statements about Mat taking his ease on his hilltop and clearly seems to enjoy watching him give orders. Teslin keeps trying to meddle in his plans, and apparently the other Aes Sedai had done so as well. I'm sure our listeners are shocked at that one by now. She's nervous that all this guerrilla warfare stuff will just cause a big retaliation from the Shan-Chan. It's not going to put a dent in their numbers. But Teslin, that's the point. Didn't you miss just a few minutes ago when Mat said he wanted to keep them reacting instead of able to execute their own plans? Once Mat elaborates on his plan some more, all the women seem speechless, and he finds this unsettling and impossible to interpret. I think they're just legitimately impressed with you, Mat. Just enjoy it while you can. Just then, Vannon shows up to report the Shan-Chan Lancers are about a mile behind him. They're headed right this way. And when they arrive, Ta'Veren Twisting has them halting right inside the trap. The Aes Sedai make a distraction of red light above the Lancers' heads, and the crossbowmen take their shots at least twice after quickly reloading. None of the Lancers made it to the trees as ordered. Mat orders them to head out so they can meet up with the other half of his forces to hit the Shan-Chan again before sunrise, but Teslin protests. The rules of warfare dictate that they should stop to render aid. Mat retorts that this is a new kind of warfare. Tuon seems impressed again, saying that a lion can show no mercy. And thus ends chapter 27, A Plain Wooden Box.
Our action chapter.
Yeah.
We got it.
Finally.
Yes. Unfortunately, there are a lot of deaths involved in this one. But fortunately, It's not Mat and his men. Oh, yeah. This is one I love to see him in general mode. We love to see Mat in most of his modes, except the other we love the trickster. We love all the other things he is. But among those, he is a great general. Off topic, but I know they keep talking about the 5 great captains, and I always wondered why they weren't the great generals, since the general is above a captain. But anyway, I digress.
I don't really understand Randland military structure, yeah.
Yes, I don't have an answer for that one. It's just one of those things I threw out there. But
maybe they just got their reputations while they were captains or something. I don't know.
Yeah, oh, wow, that's a great answer. See, you blow me away with these things. But yes, the entire setup, of course, Ta'Veren was involved in it, as it always is around Mat. That's not of his own volition. It just happens, and he takes full advantage of it. But as well, just the careful planning, the military strategic genius of Matrim Cauthon, where he can do these things instinctively. He can plan a battle in his sleep because he's experienced so many of them from his point of view, at least in these borrowed memories of his. So yeah, I love the setup of it, the way Tuon continues to study him, and from my recollection, he didn't really want her on the battlefield.
Yeah. Because
A, she might get hurt, get injured, or B, she might give him away. And of course, all the Aes Sedai are like, she cannot be there. But Mat trusted her, and I like the fact that he trusts her. It's a little creepy that she's willing to stand back and watch her soldiers get slaughtered. But it's lives are cheap in Xianchen.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of warfare. That's one reason they are so warlike. Is there have been, continual uprisings and wars within the nation of
Mm-hmm.
Xianchen itself. So they have a lot of practice at warfare and at fighting. So she's willing to lose a few men just to see what Matt is really made of. It's like she got so intrigued by him talking about it, she had to see it for herself. And later, this leads to the culmination of her truly beginning to understand he's not just the toy. He's not just Tylen's pretty boy. There's something to Matt. It's something deep, and it's something important, and it's something awe-inspiring. And so she likes him not just for his physical appearance and his joking nature, which is so opposite of hers, and we know that opposites attract, but also for his military genius. I believe in some, or to some extent, she wants to use that military genius.
Yeah.
Perhaps in her mind, as she sees this, she starts getting those backup plans in her mind. Hey, if we really do marry, then hey, I can use him. He can help me conquer this entire great land. We're going to do it anyway, but he can make it happen so much easier. So she's willing to sacrifice these soldiers just to see what he's capable of. And man, that is cold-blooded.
Yeah, it is. I didn't really think about it in those terms, but you're totally right. I wonder if she is thinking about, she knew that a man who has seen Hawkwing's face would be important in her future, right? And she straight up asked him about that a while back, and he feigned ignorance, but I wonder if she's thinking about that in a figurative way now. She's trying to figure out what that figure of speech is, thinking that he could be a unifying conqueror on that continent like Hawkwing was.
I think that's something she may have had in the back of her mind, but later when she mentions that to him, when she explains that she had a Damane read her future, someone who was capable of that, had that gift, they said you would marry a man who has seen Hawkwing's face. And so I think she was looking at it as some kind of figurative something. But when she asked him that question, she said later, I could tell you lied to me.
Yeah, of course. We know he's obvious about that stuff anyway. I've forgotten how she revealed it all later, how it went, but I just knew at the time.
And I think Matt is good at lying to a lot of people, but you think of it as a card player, poker player, and she has figured out his tale.
Yeah.
So she knows when he's lying, and he is going to be so miserable married to her if she knows when he's lying, because they can get away with it with so many other people. But this look of total innocence. What was it he said when he delivered the message to Morghese and Camlin? Tried to look as innocent as a baby in his bathwater.
Yes,
I believe. So he's capable of fooling most people, but not Tuon. And let me tell you, bro, you get a cold-blooded woman like that who can tell when you're lying, you are going to be so miserable. But hopefully the love is worth it. I think it will be.
I think there's a couple of interesting points in this chapter about Matt's attitudes to me. So Mandevwin brings up battle luck, and I found Matt's response to that really interesting. He seems right away to dismiss Mandevwin's belief in battle luck, in his head anyway. He notes how for every success, there's 2 failures that people like Mandevwin didn't count. And I thought that was interesting because it reveals a pretty good grasp on probability that most people don't have, and you would expect, especially somebody with a magical luck ability, would never really had to have learned how probability really works. So, in my mind at least, because the average person, if they're asked to make some kind of blind guesses about an outcome, like dice or which card they're going to draw or something like that, if they get just a couple right in a row randomly, they're going to start thinking that they might actually have some ability, right? They're on some little streak. They've got ESP or something. What they won't do is they're not going to notice, and they're even going to flat out forget the ones that they got wrong, which might be a huge majority of them, actually. Yes. And they could get far more wrong than right and still believe they have this uncanny ability because they're not going through actually counting it. So you would think, Matt's never really had to learn that lesson about how probability actually works, because it actually works in the magical thinking way, like the average person seems to erroneously think it does. So he would actually just be unusually lucky far more than could be reasonably be expected by probability. But so it makes me wonder if his memories from other men, do those come from maybe people who understand probability better than the average person? Now, Matt never went to school. They don't have formal education.
Right.
It just makes me wonder if people in the past of that world had decent mathematical education, and especially considering the types of technology they have, maybe somebody's got some decent math progress out there. But I still found it impressive overall.
Yeah. Perhaps maybe some of the cultures before the Trolloc Wars, perhaps they had built up more of a university type setting, and a lot of that was destroyed when those nations fell.
Yeah.
That's interesting to think about, because some of his memories were from men who were officers. I couldn't think of the word right now.
Right.
Not enlisted,
and so
they were officers. And
you could imagine they could be educated more.
Right. Yeah, perhaps would be educated more. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that till you said it, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's so impressive to me just because even with our modern Western high school systems and even college educations in many fields, those do in no way guarantee that people get around this bias in their thinking or have any real understanding of statistics. We're still surprised by seemingly unlikely events, but it's really because we fail to appreciate the size of the denominator in these equations. We don't realize how many things do happen. So the likelihood of weird stuff happening is actually pretty high if you're thinking about out of how many. Like, the coincidence is going to happen to somebody somewhere. So the fact that it happened to someone is actually not that surprising. You're just surprised because it happened to you.
Right. Well, and you can tell we don't have a good grasp on probabilities and things like that just by the number of lottery tickets sold.
Yeah, exactly.
People are continually spending money on lottery tickets, and they would get so excited because, I won $15. But over the last month, you've spent $200. So you haven't really gained anything. But like you said, people forget about all the times they lose. They focus on those few times that they win.
Right.
And I know that's just one example out of a lot of different things we can think
it's a
of.
Great one, though. Very accessible one.
Yes, the governments of the world are always the winners in lotteries.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, the house always wins. Yeah, that's exactly how it works. Exactly. It's gambling.
Every time. But yeah, people just don't have a good grasp of that. But we see how Matt has a grasp of a lot of things that goes on that we don't think of. When the Aes Sedai brought up the rules of warfare, now I don't recall them ever mentioning the rules of warfare before.
Me neither.
The majority of the times when we've had big pitched battles, it has been against Trollocs. And warfare against Trollocs, there are no rules.
Right.
We don't know. We haven't seen a lot of fighting back against the Sean-Chen. We've seen a lot of people trying, at least from Matt's perspective. He's not seen that. He's seen a lot of people try, but he's seen a lot of people fail at it.
Yeah.
The rules of civilized warfare in most modern cultures exist. As I said, to go give aid to the wounded, the people you just tried to kill. Now you're trying to help them out the best you can to keep them from dying. Matt has got to know that, and he seems very familiar with it. But the way he just turns his back on it, because, it is callous, and it is really terrible to just leave and not give any aid whatsoever. But I don't know, in my mind, I can kind of excuse the behavior, because Matt has experienced death so many times in his memories that I think it doesn't really have the same effect on him. It doesn't seem as final. It is with his death, but someone else's, people die every day. So that will go off and leave them. And like I said, it's hard for me to stomach in some ways. But he knows probably that most of them are dead or will die very soon anyway. And we're going to be facing some more soldiers in just a bit. We cannot stop and deal with these and give them any aid. We've got to go. Let some of their own guys find them and help them. And that's kind of terrible. But I can at least understand why he has that perception, that idea, because of, to him, death is, he's died hundreds of times. So all of these guys are soldiers. They signed on for it. I'm sorry, this is just what happens. But it
does seem strange to worry about giving aid for the wounds that you just caused. So I get why those types of rules are there, though. I get why there would be international agreements for how to conduct war to minimize its harms, because it's always going to be ugly. And I like how Matt recognizes that battles are never beautiful. A beautiful battle is the one you don't have to fight, is what he said.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that you can just... I don't think what he means by that is, well, all battles are ugly, so you can just do war crimes and it's fine. I think though that people trying to defend any areas of Ranland are oppressed by the Shan-Chan, or are facing the possibility of being oppressed by the Shan-Chan. And you don't really get far with your oppressors by following the rules. Right. That's just, they're gonna take advantage of you playing nice and following the rules, and that's not going to get you anywhere. And so,
in fact, if you look at it, they set up the rules, so they're going
exactly
to right most of the time. Yes,
exactly, right. So, trying to just be compassionate and humanitarian and kind of assume that they're going to think that you're so compassionate and humanitarian that they will let up on you, that's not going to work. Appealing to their humanity or their empathy or whatever is not going to work with these types of people. And I think that is part of why he makes the choice that he does here, and why it makes sense. Because if you're thinking about, okay, what if there's just a couple of borderland nations fighting each other like they used to do all the time, fighting Trollocs and stuff, or you've got some Aiel clans fighting each other, they're going to come to some kind of treaty later. There's a possibility of them being allies later. It's a very different context than the Shan-Chan coming in and wanting to drastically change everything.
Right. And I didn't think of this before. The Shan-Chan may not even have rules of warfare like that.
Yeah, they might not. I mean, they probably wouldn't have even expected aid from the enemy, as far as I know.
Tuon might. That may be why she said that a lion has no mercy, or should have no mercy. Not sure exactly. Oh, a lion can show no mercy. I see the quote now. That would just be expected with their culture. I didn't think of that till you were just speaking, but that kind of fits those puzzle pieces together in my mind. That Matt didn't know that, but he wasn't going to take time to follow the rules of civilized warfare. I mean, this entire attack was using guerrilla tactics. It's not like they lined up in formation and gave the enemy a chance to charge and all this, the crazy rules of civilized warfare that has been used by different cultures throughout history. Guerrilla tactics, attacking from in a form of surprise, setting up a trap so you have your enemy surrounded. All of these things are considered unfair by some rules of warfare. But, as I've said before, fair, it comes around about twice a year. They have carnival rides. Life is not fair, and warfare is not fair. It's just warfare.
It's kind of like how you can't, it's not going to get you anywhere to play nice with the Shido either. Like, what good do Bane and Chiad do anybody when they follow the rules of being Gashine? Right. It helps nobody. So, exactly. I think that's kind of the situation they're in here.
Yeah. So, it just seems strange. It seems rather cold-hearted, but that is part of the deal. That's the way it works. And again, the Shan-Chan don't really seem to expect any quarter or any help, but it does seem out of character for someone raised in the country who should have appreciation for life. But Matt
and who just let a snake go in his last chapter. I mean, and
a venomous snake.
But now he's going to unload a second round of crossbow bolts on these people who can't see where it's coming from. Right, interesting. Right. Yeah.
Of course, they were soldiers. They were asking for it.
Yeah, it's very different.
Still, that's just brutal. There are some, if you stop and think about it, some events in this story that are very cringeworthy, just in their brutality.
Absolutely.
If you were actually watching it, I mean, this is kind of shocking in a way.
Yeah, there's the potential for this on screen to be an extremely mature show, and I don't know how far they're going to take that, but just with the violence, you absolutely could.
Right. It's something that started in the eye of the world somewhat campy and tropey. I mean, not much, but to a degree, and sort of what we consider today young adult fiction.
Yeah.
To move into something, we've seen so many dark scenes and so many terrible places that our characters have wound up. And here is just one you see Matt in, of this cold callousness. But this is what it takes, because it's just one piece in his overall plan. And they've got to be somewhere else before relief comes, before more soldiers get there. And he has to keep them off balance. In fact, he does such a good job of it later. They're thinking they're facing about, 7,000, or I can't remember the numbers, but some huge inflated number of crossbowmen. And he's got at that time less than 1,000, I think.
Yeah.
But they were thinking he had 4,000 or 7,000 or some just huge inflated number, and he
For a
didn't have
while,
near that many.
For a while, Rand was doing the same thing with them because of the gateways.
Yes. He was using the gateways. So he cheated.
Yeah. Yeah, he did.
And it's pretty amazing how many Xiantian soldiers, that's still difficult to say, but how many of them are killed off in this series. I mean, tens of thousands of them. And
how many boats did they have?
More.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, exactly.
How are they still there? It's kind of like the Aiel numbers also don't make sense.
Oh, yeah, so inflated, so huge. How did you feed that many people in the desert? And I don't mean the desert like we have out in the western United States. I mean, this makes the Sahara look tame. The Aiel waste is so brutal. And there's no rain. It's not that there's very little rain, or rain only comes once a year, but there is no rain. So
they've got some very good aquifer extraction technology that they're not sharing with anybody.
Yes, they're desalinating or something. There's something going on there. It's really, like as we said, the numbers don't add up in the real world. But man, we get so tired of the real world. That's why we have fantasy.
Exactly.
Let's enjoy it a little bit. But yeah, it's just amazing to me how many of the Xiantian are thrown into the meat grinder. And Altarans, and
it's wild.
So many people from so many lands, and even later now, of course, they're going to face more Xiantian, but it's people who are trying to destroy them. Those are considered by Tuon to be traitors because they're out to kill her. So she really doesn't care about them. But this group, man, she just let them die for an experiment to see what Matt is like.
Yeah, cold.
Yeah. Yes, I thought my wife was mean and brutal. She has nothing of Tuon. So
speaking of
Tuon,
I mean, I've got a message directly for Matt about reading her. Matt, listen up. Tuon is sending you mixed signals. I get it. That's probably because she has mixed feelings, okay? So there is always a chance that she's playing with you with everything that she does. The kisses, wanting a kiss sometimes and not, whispering with Selucia. That's probably Occam's razor here. Let's just consider. Sometimes she wants a kiss, sometimes she does not. Giving consent once doesn't mean for all time. So, just ask if it's okay first. Quit trying to figure out a pattern or mind read. Problem solved. If you just expect that you will never know and just ask, then you'll be good. Moving on. So there's no huge mystery to what she keeps giggling about with Selucia either, probably. It looks like she enjoys seeing you take on a leadership role, bro. So just enjoy it. Next question. Moving on.
and understand, it doesn't matter if you want a kiss. It only matters if she wants a kiss.
Yeah, apparently.
No, that is good advice. I hope Matt takes it, and I hope some other people do as well. And I hope all of our listeners will join us next time for episode 33, when we'll cover Knife of Dreams chapters 36 and 37.
Subscribe to Wheel of Mind on Podbean, Stitcher, Google Play, Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. And that last one is under the name Lajara Dane, Lajaradayne, to get notified when a new episode drops every Wednesday. Leave us feedback by rating and reviewing on your preferred podcast listening platform, or by contacting us through email or on Twitter @mind_wheel for the show account, or for my personal account, you can reach me at Lajara Sedai, that's Sedai. And to support the show, visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Wheel of Mind. This is not the ending to the turning of the Wheel of Mind, but it is an ending.
Don't take any wooden nickels.